Yo, yo.
Hey,
We're
real quick
back.
before we get started,
Yeah.
in the Rumble chat, Z Billister is saying hi from Tokyo. So,
Oh, hell yeah. Of course we're global.
Somebody's watching us at 8 in the morning over there.
We love you too.
Yeah.
We do. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I remember when I first started Unregistered in 2017, there was, I forget, was it Spotify? One of the platforms gave you like the full geographical breakdown of every single listen. And it was awesome. Like there was basically at least one listener in every country on earth. And it was so cool to see like one in Pakistan, one in Zimbabwe, one. Yeah, no, it's an amazing thing, this technology, podcasting. And that's one of the ways in which it is amazing. It's completely global and international. And yeah. So that's great. Shout out to Tokyo. Can't wait I want to go there. High on my list. My son wants to go. My girlfriend wants to go. Scarlett Johansson convinced me to go in that movie. Yeah, no. So, but we have a short show tonight because I have to leave in 49 minutes. So I got to ask you, has the Intifada reached Indiana?
The Intifada? Oh, no, not really. I mean, there were some people with bullhorns like a couple weeks ago, but I don't think there's been anything special spurred on by these protests. The greatest week in all of college partying was this last weekend, the Little 500 race. The subject of the classic American Bildungsroman Breaking Away film was here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that was happening. I think once it gets beautiful here, people want to party and not protest. It's the opposite of normal protests, where if it's hot outside, you protest. If it's cold, you go in. It's the opposite. When it's cold and there's nothing better to do, you protest. And then when, yeah, it's nice out to party.
So I went to a hippie school about 2 hours east of where you are, about 2 hours east or 3 hours, I guess, of IU Bloomington campus. And so I never told you this, but preceded me, but we continued the tradition. We appropriated that race, and we put on our own version of it every year. It was called Camelot. And so Antioch College, where I went, was run by. It was a mix. I was thinking about the politics of my college. It was the dominant political factions were hippies and anarchists, with like, and then the third one was black nationalists. So that was the politics of the campus. But yeah, and aesthetically it was a 1975 Grateful Dead show every day. It was just kind of awesome. And so lots of nudity, lots of weed and acid and lots of long hair and body hair. But yeah, so Camelot was a bunch of dudes, mostly dudes, I think, riding their bikes. Like they would often have like trikes or like BMX bikes or like goofy looking bikes, riding in this little loop in the parking lot, basically naked. And then also it was a full contact sport. So they would fight each other and hit each other while they're like dudes riding around with their penises flailing about.
Jousting on tricycles.
Jousting on tricycles is exactly what Camelot mostly was. Yeah. I'm thinking of one friend of mine in particular who was big in that. But yeah, so there you go. That's my background. So really the Intifada, I bet it'll be there tomorrow. It's like every campus. I mean, it seems like every campus in the last 2 days every elite campus has kind of, it's a trend. I mean, I'm generally in support of it, I suppose, but like it's a trend. Yeah. So my alma mater and my former employer, the place of my residence, I used to call it, by the end of my tenure there, I was calling it my prison, but Columbia University, 17 years I was there as a student, as an instructor, and as a faculty member. I know that place really well. Really, really, really well. Like there is absolutely no correspondence between the rhetoric of what's being said about what's happening at Columbia now and what I'm positive is what's actually happening at Columbia. It's this is one of the most amazing fantasies I've ever seen spun out by the establishment.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, all the friends of Israel are joining in on it.
Well,
you know,
Netanyahu released an official statement on it.
Oh wow! I
saw want to see it, yeah.
And I posted right under BB's thing. I said, replied directly to him. I said, "This is the most grotesque trivialization of the Holocaust I've ever seen." To say that what's going on at Columbia is tantamount to the Holocaust, to what the Nazis were doing in the 1930s, which is what he said, says to me that there was no Holocaust. That video, what Netanyahu's statement was Holocaust denial, because nothing is happening on the Columbia campus that is of concern to any Jew or any human being even. There is, I mean, I've been watching videos in the last couple of days of students, and I was a faculty there for a decade. I had many of these students. I love those kids in general, like 90 in my experience, 98% of Columbia and Barnard students are just like really great kids, really smart, really, well raised and polite and kind and curious and sweet and all that. I know them. I've taught hundreds and hundreds of them, and it's just absurd. It's so absurd. Now, are there a handful of hysterical leftists in these protests and milling up? Oh yeah, totally. That's the 2% of the Columbia students, or it's really 1% or less. It's the professional left. Every major campus since the 1960s has had significant far left organizations that sort of dominate politics there. And it's amazing. Once again, guess what? I got to go back to my parents' organization, the ISO, the International Socialist Organization, that's the big left socialist, far left organization at Columbia and at most big universities. They might have morphed recently, but that was who they were as of a few years ago, meaning there's like 20 or 30 of them there, but they're super loud. They make protests all the time. They do marches and sit-ins, and they're very loud. They write editorials in the newspapers. That's the original, as I said a few weeks ago, the original anti-Zionist left-wing organization is the ancestors of the ISO, which is my parents' organization, a Trotskyist organization, which in the 1960s was led by a Palestinian Jew who became an anti-Zionist. But anyway, they became sort of the first. They were the first organization on the left that paid attention to Israel and took an anti-Zionist position. And they've been kind of, even though a very small little weird Trotskyist sect since then, they've kind of led the way in a sense in like formulating the anti-Zionist argument. They're very intellectual. They're not cheap shot artists. I will say that about them. So that's who's kind of leading this, that sort of tendency at Columbia. But then there's also the post-colonial. It's true. There's the post-colonial and the Middle East department, Middle East Studies department at Columbia is sort of notorious and infamous. It's where Edward Said taught for many years. He kind of created that department, in fact. And then Joseph Mossad, who Barry Weiss tried to get fired when I was teaching there. That was how she started her political career when she was an undergraduate. This is in 2003-04. She tried to get him fired for being anti-Zionist, claiming that he was anti-Semitic, which is complete bullshit, nonsense. There's a couple of other guys, professors there, Rashid Khalidi, also, and then there's one I'm forgetting the name of, and then they hired this recent adjunct who he's only been there for like 6 months or something, but he is like the wokest creature you've ever seen. But of course, he was mentioned in Congress as representing Columbia and faculty and yada yada. So here's what's going on, everybody. Here's what's really going on. Columbia University, like every major cultural institution in this country, and especially the universities, is not run by the left. They harbor the left. They give refuge to the left. There is a home for you if you're a far leftist Marxist socialist in one of these places, for sure. Many departments and many major universities have always minority factions of like serious lefty radical Marxist types, post-colonial, all that stuff. There's a handful of departments that are actually dominated by them, but overwhelmingly, The people who are the president of the university, the provost of this is for all the major universities, all of them. The president, the provost, the board, the people who actually run the place, and then also the faculty heads, in fact, the chairs often of the departments. You take that whole group and look at them, it's 100% Biden voters. They're all just Democrat liberals. They're just establishment liberals. And they don't often know this because they're so much within the matrix, they're not even aware of what they're doing. But they're literally serving the interests of that class, of the establishment liberal class that basically runs the major cultural institutions. That's how you get to be the director of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which, is not apolitical. I mean, it's the Met and all the MoMA and all those, they establish the liberal aesthetic, what it means, what it looks like to be a good person, which is all sort of bound up with liberalism. And of course, if you want to be a journalist and work for the New York Times and cover geopolitics and cover Israel and Ukraine, the only way to do that is to go through the Ivy Leagues, like Columbia. The Columbia Journalism School is the top journalism school in the country. It's the major feeder into these establishment legacy media outlets. That's who runs the place, everybody. But for various reasons, the left, the real left, the radical left, has managed to establish sort of a beachhead within the major universities and the minor universities too, since about the 1960s. They do not and never have in any way, shape, or form run those places. Trust me. I have been not just at Columbia. I've been at, I've taught as a faculty, I think at 6 universities, and I've been a student at 4 of them. And I've been around this whole world since 1984. And I grew up in Berkeley around all sorts of academics and intellectuals. I know this world. Liberals run it. Liberals run UC Berkeley, liberals run Harvard, Yale, every single Ivy, every single major. There is no actual left radical who runs a university. Not one. Not one. Even at Evergreen, which is in Antioch, where I went, which is what I was getting to, the presidents, we were always fighting them and trying to kill them and overthrow them and have revolutions against them and always outraged by them and how horrible they were. Why? Because they were liberals, not radicals like we were, right? These institutions were established and maintained and continue to be financed to the tune of billions of dollars collectively by the State Department. Columbia's SIPA program department, it's their International Public Affairs department. It's not just a department, it's a whole building. It's a whole school. Sorry, it's not a department, it's a school, SIPA. It's a whole school. They train State Department diplomats. That's who's there. Like, that's where Hillary Clinton teaches, guys. Remember? Columbia, Hillary Clinton teaches there. Victoria Nuland just got hired there and teaches there. This is not the Maoist left who runs the place. For various reasons, they have had to accommodate the radical left over the last 50 years. And so the radical left does have a place there. And you can be a Maoist, basically, or some kind of Marxist or post-colonial radical or third worldist, we used to call it, faculty member. Those do exist with students who you can influence and, encourage to think in certain ways and maybe go protest in certain ways and all the rest of it. Yeah, that totally is there, but it is a minority, and it is a minority without any power institutionally. Culturally, they have power because, again, they can teach and speak and have students who then go out into the world and disseminate this stuff. So that's what I see at the encampment, the protest in Columbia. I see I see some people who are the students clearly of the Edward Said tradition, the Joseph Massad tradition at Columbia, the hardcore left there, and all other Marxists. There's other Marxist professors, many of whom I know personally. But always there are like 1 or 2 in the department. And then I see mostly, though, a bunch of sweet little middle class or upper class, upper class, often Jewish, all American kids that were just sweet as pie and have great grades and are going to go work for, some humanitarian NGO after graduation and love their parents. And, they're tremendous citizens. These are not, no one wants to kill anybody there, except for, there's probably a handful of like hardcore Marxist revolutionaries, I would think, who are fine with revolutionary blood war, for sure. But again, it's a fringe that, of course, the entire media, the entire establishment, political class, and of course, Benjamin Netanyahu latch onto and say, see, these are our enemies. This is who, if you oppose us, you are siding with people like that. It's just one of the biggest frauds and psyops I've ever seen, which is saying a lot. It's just stunning. If you know anything about Columbia, if you know anything about the elite universities and higher education, if you know anything about those people, which I know like everything about, it's just, no one, I said to Yael Bartour on Twitter the other day, she came after me. She's like one of the top sort of friends of Israel, public intellectual, whatever, going recently. And she came after me about something about this stuff. And she started sort of arguing with me about how it's really, really scary and dangerous for Jewish kids at Columbia. I'm like, do you know what Jews at Columbia, and by the way, my department, the history department, had a lot of Israelis in it for some reason. A lot of Israeli graduate students were there, and friends of mine, the people I've talked about who live in Tel Aviv currently, are those people. You know what the Israeli Jews and all the sort of American Jews, who by the way constitute about one half of the student body there, if you account for people like me who are mixed, it's what we all called it. All the Jews called it at Columbia was Columbia University, because it was fucking everywhere you turned. There's a Shapiro and over here and a Leibowitz over there and a Levy down there. And it's just like the damn place is like dominated and usually and often run by Jews or half Jews or whatever. But like it is an astoundingly obviously Jewish place, and has been for about 80 years. Columbia, dominated by like the most famous intellectuals who have come out of Columbia are damn near all Jewish. The idea that anti-Semitism is a problem at Columbia is like saying anti-Black racism is a problem next door in Harlem. I mean, it's not just like inaccurate, it's the exact inversion of what really goes on there. So all of this, and then Mike Johnson, the freaking Speaker of the House, who like anti-Zionist Jews, they call these people Shabbos goys, the ones who push the elevator button for you during Shabbos so you don't have to, meaning like it's Gentiles who serve the interests of Israel, essentially. He gets up there on the steps of Low Library and starts ranting against these kids and making up shit about, he's still talking about babies burned in ovens. And it's just, where's he from again? Louisiana? Some white boy from Louisiana? Do you really think he just came to this this passionate embrace of Israel just organically, from his fraternity, like at LSU or wherever he's from? Like, do you really? It's AIPAC. It's the Israel lobby. They give him, we looked it up. They make zillions of dollars. The major campaign contributors are AIPAC to him, and Elise Stefanik. Look at her campaign contributions. It's the Israel lobby up and down. It's not just AIPAC. There's multiple Israel lobbies, by the way. And it's not just the money that they get directly from AIPAC and others. It is that AIPAC will fucking destroy you if you turn on Israel with massive media campaigns calling you an anti-Semite, and you will be disallowed from polite society, and you will no longer be invited onto the talk shows. Fox News will now distance themselves from you because they're completely owned by AIPAC. It is, it's wild, man. It's a wild Jewish conspiracy that we're seeing here, but it's not. It's a Zionist conspiracy. I mean, these are different people. Zionists are different people. They're not. They have nothing. I think they have nothing to do with Jews. Actually, I think it's a completely different category of people. They have nothing to do with the Jews I've ever known. And There you have it. It's an incredible, fraudulent carnival ride that is essentially serving to perpetuate, as I keep saying, the killing of 100 kids or so per day and their moms.
Yeah, I was looking for the clip of whoever it was. His wife went out into that protest and was wearing a shirt that said Jew and Israel on the back and was like standing defiantly. And like everybody is just like looking at her and smiling and banging their drums. And she's like, I was looking for that video. I couldn't find it. But apparently Ilhan Omar was received warmly by the protesters, which is surprising because she voted for the bill that just gave $26 billion in aid to Ukraine. So I don't.
And Israel. Right?
I'm sorry, $26 billion to Israel.
To Israel and 60 to Ukraine. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Let's talk about this shit, Ilhan. Yeah. Excuse me, Zionist tool. Why
aren't these protesters calling her out? I think these are. I don't think these protesters are that informed, maybe, or I think they're aspirational Democrats. I think that they are just pretending a protest. They are pretending being important while they're young, and then they will moderate and be good liberals when they grow up. And I think when push comes to shove, everybody on the left, 99% of the time, votes for the Democrat regardless. So I think we're going to see that again.
I mean, it's political tribalism. And again, we are talking mostly here, in this case, about 20-year-old kids, right? Like, I don't even...
But literally every single Democrat. I mean, it's not hard because literally every single Democrat in the House voted for this. Every single Democrat in the Senate, I believe, also voted for this.
Every single Democrat. There were 21 votes against, all Republicans. Hello. And Marjorie Taylor Greene voted against it. And she's a big pro-Israel. Does she take AIPAC money? That's an interesting question. Why is she so pro-Israel? But yeah, 21 people. I think Tom Massey was kind of the leader of that, the opposition to the bill. And man, he has been... I don't have any politician, but if I had to pick, he's my dude. He's been quite good for a while. Yeah, he's been for a while. Not perfect, but excellent, I would say, on the big stuff. On war, surveillance, security state, privacy, speech. He's been, I think, pretty close to perfect. And often like really brave. I mean, he was the first to come out really aggressively against the Ukraine war. And
what was it? The CARES Act, whatever act it was during COVID, the giant omnibus spending bill. He was the only person who was like, we need to at least bring this to a vote. And that got him, demonized by Trump. That got him demonized by everybody on all sides.
Right.
He's been the only ideologically consistent person at all in the House of Representatives, more so than Matt Gaetz, more so than anybody.
And he also does this thing, which I really admire, of not at all doing Israel's bidding. In fact, pretty much working against their interests, while in no way, shape, or form embracing any of the left anti-Zionist criticisms or resembling anything like what, all the people I hang out with are saying.
He still gets called an anti-Semite.
Well, of course, because there's a video, I've never verified it, but it looks pretty legit, from I think the 80s, of a Mossad. She's a middle-aged elderly woman who was a Mossad agent, I believe, or she worked in Israeli intelligence. And she says straight up, that was our primary strategy that we employed. I think they even have a name for it in Hebrew, which is that whenever there's a criticism of Israel made by a public figure, we call them anti-Semitic. And we hammer it, we go hard on that. And we have the ADL help us with that and tell everybody that this person's anti-Semitic when they're actually just anti-Israel, or even just critical of Israel. In fact, wasn't Biden just called anti-Semitic, I think, for not being like the ultimate baby killer, just the supreme baby killer? Massey, brave. And he comes at it from that good old kind of American classical liberal Ron Paul. It's been called, non-interventionist place, which I love. My audio, dude. Why is my audio doing this again?
It sounds okay on my side.
No, it's not for me.
Okay. Real quick, we got a super chat.
Yeah.
NGS, our buddy, I think in Norway, that's what that currency is. Says, not fair by Michael Tracy to make Hinkle and Ritter representative of the crowd critical of the Ukraine war. Their stupidity is why they don't appear on the Duran.
Aha. Well, first of all, they both have been on Duran. And so I don't know about that, but oh gosh, my audio. Oh boy. 1 second, everybody.
Okay. Real quick, this is in reference to the last interview show, 273. We had Michael Tracy back on. Yeah, and it's funny, Thad and I were talking about this before the show, that Tracy is calling out, Scott Ritter and Jackson Hinkle as people who are cheerleading Putin in a certain way about the war, that are glad that Putin is doing what he's doing, that are...
Yeah. Michael makes a good point, which is that it's not so much that they're pro-Putin, but they end up being pro-war, that they are effectively pro-war. If people can hear the echoes I'm hearing, let me know. Let us know. What is going on, because it's going through my AirPods. But anyway, I can't do this. Sorry, I gotta fix this. Okay. Man alive, this is crazy. I've never had anything like this. It doesn't happen when I'm doing the show, the podcast. I don't understand this. And boy, this is exciting for everyone to listen to. Let me... Sorry, everyone. I'll be with you in a moment. I don't... Oh, okay. Let's mess with this. Echo cancellation?
Yeah, I hear the echo now.
Right, that's what I've been hearing. Oh, boy. Wait. Reduce mic background noise. How's that? We good?
That sounds better on my end, yeah.
What's great is, like, every week it's a different fix. It's a different solution. All right, cool. Michael Tracy. In this amazing, I think it's awesome. It's one of my favorite episodes in a long time. We just argue for an hour and a half, and we argue about, I think, very important stuff. If you're interested in anything in this world, he and I, of course, have been very firmly in the, anti-interventionist camp. We agree on Ukraine and Israel, which is that the United States should have nothing to do with it, and super critical of U.S. policy in those places. But he has noticed increasingly what I've noticed, and I've said this a long time ago, shortly after I had Scott Ritter on my show. Some people on our side in that world, in the alt media, in particular in geopolitics, are clearly sympathetic to the Russian state, Putin in general. They tend to say nothing but positive things about Putin. And are they are supporters of the war itself, in itself. I mean, Mark Sloboda, who I think, it's interesting. Mark Sloboda, I think, is like one of the very best geopolitical analysts out there. And I actually encourage everyone to go seek him out and listen to him. But Mark, when he was on my show on Unregistered, was wearing a big Z lapel pin. We talked about it. I said, so you're clearly a partisan here on the side of the Russian state in this particular military action. He was like, absolutely. His wife is from Eastern, the Donbass, I think. And he lives in Moscow, and he used to work at Moscow State and friends with Dugin. But, the thing about, so Mark Sloboda, like, I have zero criticism of that, because that's just stating up front exactly where you are, which I love, right? And my analysis flows from this perspective and this position I have politically, and he literally wears it on his chest. Others, Scott Ritter, Jackson Hinkle. Well, Hinkle is also completely out there in terms of like being in sort of an embarrassing juvenile way, a fan of Putin.
And a Stalinist.
And Stalin. Okay. Which is, it's disappointing because I actually had hopes. I had high hopes for Jackson, and I said nice, I don't know him at all, but I said nice things about him a couple of years ago on Twitter when he was the first time he was being attacked. I defended him on Twitter and said he was a excellent journalist, which at that point he was. He was I think he was 21 years old at that point or something, but he was doing at that point a couple of years ago journalism that almost no one else was doing. He was doing the stuff that the Gray Zone does now consistently, but then he veered off, or maybe always held this in his heart and just wasn't exposing it. But he very quickly became a fanboy of the third world dictators. He and Putin, etc. He is sort of the latest version, the internet version of what we used to call third worldists. From the 60s through the 80s, these were the people on the left who supported the Viet Cong. They didn't just oppose the war in, the American war. They were pro Viet Cong. They were pro Gaddafi. We talked about this before. My college friend who had the Gaddafi's little green book, they supported Gaddafi. They supported the Sandinistas, of course, and they supported the FMLN in El Salvador, the Marxists in El Salvador, and they supported all the opponents of American empire, no matter what their politics were, but especially if they were left-wing communists, then they were really down. They supported Iraq. They supported Saddam in 2003, pro-Saddam. I mean, that's what we in the left used to call the third worldist tendency, which comes from Maoism, which is simply a valorization of third world peasants in their struggles against the colonial overlords. The idea with Mao is that you just always support them, and the peasant revolution is really the true class struggle. It's no longer between the proletariat, the industrial proletariat, and the capitalist bourgeoisie. It's between the third world peasantry versus the first world ruling class. That is this sort of global epic struggle. And in some ways, that is being played out. That analysis wasn't entirely wrong, but the politics that flowed from it were Maoism, the Cultural Revolution, intense moralism, glorification of revolutionary violence. It goes on and on. So that's who that is. I think, which it's just, we're talking about a sliver, of American, the American left. A sliver of it.
I want to distinguish Scott Ritter a little bit. Oh, shit. I'm hearing echo on your end. I'm hearing myself echo for you.
I think it might be on your end.
It was really bad. I don't get it. Okay, let me try this.
It sounds good to me. Now I'm really confused. We gotta fix this.
I think I'm getting what now. Shit.
Oh my gosh.
This is really bad. Huge echo. And they're saying they do.
This is terrible. I just changed to echo cancellation.
Test. That's great. That's great for me now.
Okay. Hopefully it'll stick for me. Sorry, everybody. We got to fix this, Michael. This is not good. Very unprofessional.
I still see Scott Ritter as a member of the right, and I think he just has a weird, goofy. Well, I just think he has a circuitous route to his politics that comes from being a Marine who's super loyal to the United States and sees the current United States as disloyal to their own interests.
No. He's loyal to Russia, the Russian state. Yeah. Oh no, he's loyal. Yeah. No, he's definitely loyal to the Russian state. Yep. Well, I've listened to him a lot. He's loyal to them.
But
and I mean that word. I choose that word very. He's loyal. That's the word. Yeah.
The way he gets to that, though, is from his mythological belief in World War II and how the Germans are the ultimate enemy. And so, he sees Russia as holding Germany athwart. we went through this in our course that we did with him, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I think it's more so like the United States never properly punished Germany, and so Russia did that, and that's where his loyalty abounds. It's
in that course, you and I were the first people ever to challenge Scott Ritter on those questions.
Yeah.
And we both made him answer to that.
Mhm.
And it turned out to be an incredible course, and really illuminating because, anyway. But yeah, that's the NATO course, the history of NATO at Unregistered Academy, if you're interested. Highly recommend that one. Yeah. No, but so Michael Tracy's argument is that a large portion of the critics of the Ukraine war in alt media, meaning people like us, have been not, as I said, not just pro-Putin, but more importantly, in effect, pro-war. That they've justified the Russian invasion, in various ways, which is the justification of the initiation of war, and that's not a terrible argument. And it's something that everyone on our side needs to be thinking about. And he's right also that most people on our side on this stuff are partisans, and they would not ever consider that. They would just like shut you down. Same with the current Israel-Gaza war. I mean, if you're on one side or the other, if you say anything that is like just discordant with your team's message, you get tossed out, ostracized. So,
which is fair to say, like 2 years into the conflict, where it hasn't been wrapped up in a nice bow, like a lot of people said it would be on both sides, where both sides promised an easy victory, which is like the hallmark of every horrible war, is that both sides think it's going to be quick, and then it drags on for years and years and years with the meat grinder.
I was a huge fan, like a lot of people, of a lot of these geopolitical analysts at the beginning of the Ukraine war. And I thought, oh my God, they're so on point, and they're completely revealing the truth about what's really going on, and the mainstream media won't let them on because Scott's one of them. Doug McGregor is another one. Gonzalo Lira briefly was another one. R.I.P. Gonzalo. But like, I'm trying to think of Jackson Hinkle, but in particular McGregor, who kind of dazzled a lot of us early on. He did predict damn near every week that Ukraine was about to collapse. And now I get, feeds on my YouTube channel of the videos he does of the podcast. And the headline, the title of the video is always Ukraine's imminent collapse, Ukraine on the verge of destruction. It's true. People have said this about him. It's right. It's correct. Since 2022, you can see this. Every time Doug McGregor speaks about the Ukraine war, which has been every day for 2 years, he says the same thing. And he's been wrong so far. Now, long term, he's right. I still think, and almost everyone thinks now, that Ukraine is losing and will lose the war. But the apocalyptic confidence with which he predicted this constantly tells me something.
With specific deadlines that have passed, also.
Say again?
With specific deadlines that have already passed.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
6 months ago, he was saying 2 weeks from now, they'll take Kiev or stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. No, it's true. I mean, I remember seeing someone criticize him for that a long time ago, and I was like, come on, McGregor's on point here. He gets it. No, it's right. It's right. And even, I'm sorry to say this because I love these guys and I'm a huge fan and I watch them every day, and I think they're almost always right. The Duran. I mean, Alexander Mercouris worked it for RT. He was an RT commentator. I think Cristoforo was connected to RT in some way or another, and they're just simply too sympathetic to Russia, or too allied with Russia. And that's the problem. It just, as I said before on the show many times, it just so happens in this moment, in regards to this conflict, the Russian perspective, the Russian state's perspective, is correct in this moment. Doesn't mean I'm endorsing anything about the Russian state. Their analysis and perspective on what is happening in Ukraine and in Europe generally in the last 25 years is correct. That's all I'm saying. And I think most people who side with me on this issue are saying. I don't know anybody who loves Putin personally. I don't even know anybody who sort of loves Russian culture personally. I'm not a fan myself, never have been. In fact, I've often been critical of Russian culture. But you do?
Yeah.
You never been there, bro.
I know, but I still read Dostoevsky and play chess.
That's true.
Yeah.
And the Russian porn stars are, par excellence. But the women, although they tend to be kind of, that doesn't matter. Severe, I was going to say. There's a severity about the Russian personality that it's not great for me. But anyway, yeah. Tracy makes a good point. The problem in the interview is that he gets very upset about this right away, and he thinks that I'm going to be apologizing or defending the Putinists. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you agree, NGS. But I need to make this very, very clear. And let me say this again. I said this, but I watch the Duran every single day. Every single day. They are the best geopolitical analysts out there. And if you're not watching and paying attention to the Duran, you don't know shit, frankly. You don't know a lot of stuff. You're missing out on the major currents in geopolitics. Those guys are also I think Mercurius in particular, is very intellectually honest and very willing to listen to counterpoints. He's not a shill at all. I just think he's a little too sympathetic to Russia. That's all. But he's in no way a shill.
I want to endorse Michael Tracy's work as well, because all last week he has been hounding MAGA for Donald Trump's role in passing this $100 billion spending bill. Something that Johnson has made explicitly clear and has outlined in very specific ways how Donald Trump met with him to include specific things in this bill to make it more appealing to the MAGA constituency, how there's this loan aspect of it, as if a zero interest loan that has no actual requirements to ever be paid back for some of the aid to Ukraine is this big win for America that will give some leverage to the new Ukrainian government after they get destroyed by Russia eventually. And Lindsey Graham himself is also thanking Trump every step of the way. That, to me, this is the end of MAGA. Like, you can't endorse Trump at all after this bill gets passed.
Yeah.
If you really care about any of this. Yeah.
So Michael Tracy started yelling at me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, maybe, about whether Trump was a peace politician, whether he was pro-empire, pro-NATO, pro-war, all that, right? And my position early on in the Trump administration, and I did a whole interview for Reason about this, it's on YouTube, and I wrote a piece somewhere about it, and was not that Trump's a peacenik. Obviously not. I mean, he killed a whole bunch of people with drones, and in Mosul and in Raqqa and Soleimani and many others, Iranians who were killed in that strike. And it was that Trump nonetheless discursively, rhetorically, ideologically delivered, I mean, some kind of like major body punch to the idea of the American empire, which has been the guiding idea in this country since about 1760. This is what the elite has always hung on to, and it's been a requirement to be in the American elite. The idea that we should be the policeman of the world, the big brother of the world, the savior of the world, the protector of the world. Trump came along and was like, if it don't pay, why do it? If we don't get the oil, why bother? You know, these long occupations are expensive and don't work and kills a lot of my boys who I like watching football instead of serving in uniform. Really, this is how he thinks, but I like that. I like that. Man, that's the kind of anti-war ideology that I really can get behind. But so Tracy, though, he's come along, he would yell at me at the time, and he wrote pieces about it, and we literally yelled at me on my show about it, that no, Trump is actually just like all the rest, that the military budget, and Ben Burgess too not yelled, but he made a very good argument about this to me on the show and elsewhere, that the military budget went up under Trump at his direction. That was Trump's wishes. He wanted it bigger. He got it. Weapons were sent to Ukraine by Trump. The first round of sanctions against Russia were initiated by Trump. Soleimani, the hit on Soleimani, destroying the Iran nuclear deal.
Continuing Obama's war on Yemen.
Continuing the war on Yemen. What else? Moving the frickin' which then I thought not as so important, but now I do. Moving the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, which was a big deal at the time, still is. Just very aggressive, hawkish stuff. Now, Tracy's right and I'm right. Well, yeah, that's just kind of funny when Tracy and I argue. It's like,
I think this push that Trump made with Speaker Johnson just proves that Trump is serious about becoming president again. And I think he knows where his bread is buttered. And I think he knows that you can't be president and actually oppositional to the war machine. And so I think he's presenting himself as somebody who can carry this on for another 4 years. And I think that's what he's communicating. I think he might have some instincts like what you were yelling at Tracy and outlining earlier, but I don't think that's borne any fruit. Effectively.
Yeah. I mean, Trump is at neither pole. He's occupies this strange in between space. He's his own dude. He's his own politician. There's no one like him.
If you get his emails or if you watch his Truth Socials, all he talks about is what other people say about him. Like Bill Barr endorsed him, and he did this whole thing. Like that's all he cares about is how he's perceived by others, and that's it. Yes. That's where the buck ends.
The narcissism is clearly the driving force in him, no doubt about it. But that can be sort of charming to me, and in some ways, it's better than an ideological driving force, right?
Yeah, and that could be worked with pragmatically, but when the levers of power are what they are, and you can't get into office without sucking up to the military-industrial complex, and you don't want to get thrown in jail, or you don't want the RNC to enact some weird rule to where you can't be candidate anymore. Yep. You have to signal that you're going to play ball if you really want to be president again.
Totally. Yep. Beautifully put, as always. Yeah. I mean, that's the danger of the narcissist in office, in power. Because he'll just go with the flatterers. Mm-hmm. And in fact, that probably explains Trump's whole foreign policy history and is the teams he assembled. John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, all these assholes who he brought, who like otherwise completely disagree with and hate his guts now and make it clear that they do. But probably at the time they were like, "Oh, Mr. President, thank you for bringing a refreshing new perspective to Washington, D.C. May I help you in this project of yours?" I'm sure they just flattered him and therefore got the jobs, and then set out to subvert everything he stood for. I do think Trump, if he left to his own devices, if you took Trump on a long vacation by himself and let him just sit in the desert and meditate for a few weeks, and then asked him about geopolitics and U.S. foreign policy, I really do think he would end up with us. Mm-hmm. I do. That's what's threatening. That's why they freaked out. That's what Russiagate's about. That's what much of Trump derangement syndrome is about his foreign policy ideas. That he was talking about NATO being a problem, like from the jump. At the beginning of the primaries, he starts talking about NATO being a bad thing. That's when the whole anti-Trump machine kicked into gear again because of his foreign policy ideas. I promise you. That's why the CIA set out to destroy him from the get-go, because they were going to bring down their entire regime. He was going to bring it down.
Yeah. I want to talk about Tucker Carlson.
Quick, okay, and then I got to go.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. He was on Rogan this last week, and it signaled like this massive shift in the right, where like Ben Shapiro on the Daily Wire, who I think feel jilted by Joe Rogan as like an ex-girlfriend who used to entertain them and now wants to talk to Tucker. But they're like, what is this guy talking about aliens and 9/11 and all this stuff? He's a complete goofball. He believes in that demons actually exist, as like mocking all the religious followers on the right. But it does boil down to foreign policy, which Tucker is like one of the few substantive critics on the right. Yep. And I want to bring it up for a lot of ways because Mitch McConnell named him as like the #1 thing that delayed Ukraine aid real quick.
Yeah. You've been probably one of the most ardent backers of Ukraine in the Senate here, but what took so long to get some of these other 8 Republicans persuaded to your position here? Was it the overall nature of this bill and what was lost in that time period for Ukraine?
Well, that's a good question. You already know the answer. I think the demonization of Ukraine began by Tucker Carlson, who, in my opinion, ended up where he should have been all along, which is interviewing Vladimir Putin. And so he had an enormous audience, which convinced a lot of rank-and-file Republicans that maybe this was a mistake. I think the former president had sort of mixed views on it. We all felt that border was a complete disaster, myself.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a demonization of Ukraine going on. That's really concerning. Wow. I mean, that's a great concession that it's been effective.
Yeah.
And that Tucker's response, of course, Tucker is. I mean, if the Republican politicians on Capitol Hill were honest, they'd be talking about Tucker Carlson all the time. He is their problem. He is their problem more than Trump in some ways, because Tucker basically every day for the last 7-8 years has been launching hand grenades at the Republican establishment like Mitch McConnell. And kind of not in any explicit direct way being a MAGA representative, but certainly advancing the MAGA agenda pretty steadily and aggressively on a daily basis, as I said, for many, many years. And so, yeah, Mitch, man, with his weak chin, of course he's going to feel threatened by Tucker.
I think Tucker Carlson, while he was on Fox News, was the single voice potentially that convinced Trump not to invade Syria, not to invade Iran further. Definitely Syria. When Donald Trump was bombing Syria and CNN was praising him for his beautiful bombs, all those clips.
Yep.
Tucker Carlson had some people on who explained it as if you're a 6-year-old, that this is the dumbest idea ever. Like he looks straight into the camera. And Donald Trump does not read his briefings. He watches Fox News. So I think this had a huge impact. Like
Tucker, during that time, Tucker Carlson had Aaron Mate on.
Yeah.
To say that the whole thing was a fraud, that Assad did not gas his own people, that the entire pretext for U.S. intervention in the joint was a whole made-up fraud, which I'm 99% sure it was. Ben Burgess and I talked on the phone recently, a few months ago, about this, and he said that he's debated Aaron about this, and he's actually done the research. I did the research too, and it looks like a fraud to me that Assad gassed his own people, that it was a CIA or MI6 operation. Ben, and I definitely respect Ben on things like this. He thinks Aaron's wrong, so I just want to put that out there. I encourage. I know the Syria civil war is like the most complex, gross, horrible, difficult thing to understand, but it's really kind of crucial in some ways, more so than the Gaza war right now, to understand what's really going on in the Middle East. The Syrian civil war became like the nexus for all the things that are going on in the Middle East. And that is kind of the whether Assad gassed his own people really became like the crux of it. And the position you took on that question determined everything else about that war, which side you took. And that had all sorts of consequences. But I want to do something more about the Syrian war because people just don't know it. It's very, very, amazingly, it makes the Gaza war look simple. It's so complex. But yeah, so I think that, yeah.
Wrapping up on alternative media, one more from NGS. He said that Mercurius is more impressive than all of the mainstream media combined on Ukraine.
Oh,
I bet a lot of smart people in the elite are watching but will not admit to it.
Oh, we know this. Yeah. Yeah.
Great point. I think that's the case with a lot of other voices too. We should probably start talking about Icarus Festival.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I was listening.
All I gotta say is get your tickets because we have not seen ticket sales like this in a long time. Yeah, no, it's seriously VIPs. I'm not even sure how many we have left, but VIPs are everything's selling fast. Jimmy Dore headlining comedy night, first night, Friday night. But here's the thing about that night. It's even better than that. So that night, Friday night, the first night of Icarus Fest, is Jimmy Dore and Max Blumenthal. They each will do stand-up comedy sets. And then we're going to open it up to a full open Q&A with Max and Jimmy. And the audience will have their way with them, whatever they want to do. It's going to be a whole night with Jimmy Dore and Max Blumenthal, comedy, politics, all of that for the whole night. So that ticket is going to fly. It is flying. We're selling more of that than anything else right now. And if you want to get on that, that's going to be stunning. We will have video of that. But do that. Yeah. Then we got Anna Kachian from Red Scare. We got Jack Mason from the Perfume Nationalist. We got Michael Tracy, the aforementioned most brilliant journalist. We'll be there the whole weekend. They'll be there at the VIP event. So if you're a VIP, that's who you're going to be hanging out with. All these people. Michael Weimer will be. Are you okay with this? Are you still cool with the drum circle?
I will be a drum circle facilitator for our hippie festival that we're doing.
Man,
not hippie festival if there's no drum circle.
Man, it'd be truly, even though this is going to be an incredible festival. That is the one thing that I am most excited about. There's going to be an awesome hippie drum circle led by Michael Weimer, but it's Michael, so it's going to be cool. Not just cool, but it can be extremely informative and super duper smart.
Yeah, I hate drum circles.
Exactly.
I like to conceptualize it as a drum pyramid where there's specific roles and things support each other, and we're actually doing something.
Oh, a hierarchy.
Yeah, a hierarchy. This is going to be a hierarchical.
Oh,
yeah.
Very, very, very ancient of you. Good. Okay.
Yeah, this is going to be a Curtis Yarvin level.
Something about lobsters, hierarchy, something. Yeah, that's the drum circle. We're gonna have the Jordan Peterson drum circle, led by we won't. No, it's gonna be the Michael Weimer drum circle, which is about 10 zillion times better. Comedy, we're gonna have. I mean, the comedy is just so off the chain. So Friday we got Jimmy and Max. Saturday we have a whole showcase of comedians. Featuring Danny Polishuk, who I thought was the best comedian last year, who's partners with Ryan Long. Hilarious dude, who I disagree with on politics, and that's one of the things about Icarus is that we have multiple political perspectives. So long as you oppose the establishment, we welcome you. Danny, and then tell me who else. Saturday we have who else on Saturday? We have
Lou Perez.
Lou is the MC for the whole weekend, Friday and Saturday, and Lou was the MC last year, and that's why we brought him back because he was perfect for the job. Love Lou.
Staple of the Williams Center now.
He is. Yeah, he's got a regular gig at the Williams Center. That's right.
Robbie the Fire Bernstein also on that showcase.
Robbie the Fire Bernstein, and I got to hit him up to do his live podcast there, but he's going to be doing stand-up for sure on Saturday night in the showcase. And I've told the story about Robbie many times, but he's just got that serious, he and Danny, I think, have that real Jewish vaudeville talent. That's just, it's deep in the Jewish New York DNA. Brilliant comedian, hilarious dude, politically fascinating, radical, awesome. So yeah. IcarusFest.com.
Mm-hmm.
There
I was going to say, Jack Mason put his Taylor Swift episode out of the paywall.
He sure did.
And he was highlighting all the little ways that Taylor Swift was obviously influenced by the Red Scare podcast about 5 years ago. And Anna Kachin is one of those voices that nobody admits to listening to, but everybody listens to and is rippling out everywhere.
Yep.
And then, Taylor Swift's wearing an Elena Velez dress. So the same person that Jack and Anna are modeling for is putting clothes on the world's biggest stars. So
the Filthy Armenian podcast will be there.
Alex can be there, yeah.
And I'm talking Alec into doing like an open podcast thing where all the speakers come and hang out with him and talk with him throughout the weekend. But yeah, this is the shit. June 7th and 8th, the Williams Center in Rutherford, New Jersey, the second annual Icarus Fringe and Film Festival. Go check it out. IcarusFest.com. Get your tickets now. Truly, the VIPs. I mean, I think the general admission, I don't know about that. They'll be available for a little while. But the VIPs, if you want that, hanging out with all these speakers, get it now. All right. I got to go.
Okay, sweet. Yeah.
Peace, man.
Peace. Yeah, see ya.